Hello everyone and welcome to Heartcore. I am Miko and on the other side of the world we have...
Hey guys, it's Michelle.
So today we're going to host our last episode for now or potentially forever. We haven't really decided this yet. So we're going to see where life takes us. It was an amazing journey. Thank you so much for this entire journey, Celestina, and also to you, dear listener, if you've been listening from the beginning or if you're new here. This has been a really fun time and I learned a lot, and I appreciate also your insights throughout this whole thing, another perspective, another way of seeing things. And yeah, let's see where we're going. It doesn't mean that we're stopping whatever it is we're doing on the side. So Celestina is still a registered dietitian and she's still happy to take you under her wing when it comes to human design and nutrition or whatever her new paths are going to look like.
Great questions.
And opportunity is also still going to be there. Human design readings are still available and courses, and we're going to be hosting retreats soon. So those are all things to look forward to. But for this episode, we wanted to leave you with something that will help you implement human design into real life. And that's why we've decided to help you integrate the human design experiment, quote unquote, into your everyday life.
Yeah. What stood out for me when I found human design is that I felt it was maybe the only self-discovery tool, if you will, that didn't box me in. I feel like everything else that I sought out, I felt boxed in. And you can do that if you're just like super hardcore about your chart and you live and die by your chart. But like there's so much more to that. And that's where the actual experimentation comes into play. Yes, you know your profile. Yes, you know your strategy and your authority. But putting that into practice is different than feeling boxed in and what I found sometimes making excuses because of your authority, your strategy, your profile. So we're going to go through some practical ways to do it and then get a little bit woo-woo as we normally do here for you guys as well. So demystifying this process of the experiment, like what does that mean? That means that everything that we've discussed over the course of 70-ish episodes, there are pieces of it that are probably reflected in your charts or in the charts of people you know, or if you're going back to the episodes where we talked about famous people to better understand how that uniqueness can present itself, learning about that to an extent, but then also going out into the world and making decisions based off of the youest you. Right? That experiment and listening to your body, your personal decision-making center. And there may be a couple of different parts of your body telling you what to do in different moments of time. But listening to your body is really what the experiment is about. And it's not going to be about learning everything and knowing the exact gate, center, line, color, tone, base, and exactly the expression of that for you, right? It's going to be living it at the highest level and experimenting with it at the highest level for you. And then maybe going a little bit deeper as you start to decondition. But yeah, I think the thing is like you have to consciously choose to make these changes every day, right? Consciously choose to step into the youest you every day. And oftentimes that means releasing some of the things that we've learned societally from family, from those who are around us that maybe clouded us a bit. And again, this is all a learning process, so there's no reason to like shit on yourself about this, right? We're all here to learn. We're all here to grow. We do it at different rates and different times. And yeah, so that's kind of the deconditioning experimentation, quote unquote, and leaning into that process.
Yeah, you're mentioning a really good thing that's also the reason why in the human design community it's called experiment. Because it's really about stepping into action, not just consuming, and wondering, have I figured it out yet? But all you really need to know is your strategy and your inner authority to get started. And a lot of times, all this information can become super confusing as well. So the more you know, the harder it is a lot of times. To me, this was with meditation. When I first started meditation, I had no idea about any kind of techniques or tools or what to focus on or anything. I just went to a Buddhist monastery in Germany with a friend of mine. She took me by the hand and she was like, come on, we're going there. And I was like, sure. So then we went there. There was a meditation that was taking place. We sat down and the monk just guided us for a few sentences and then he let us sit there for an hour. And within, it felt like 5 minutes, an hour had passed. And I didn't even notice it. I just went, I don't know where I went. I just disappeared, but my body was still there. And it was an hour later that we got pulled out of the meditation. And that was my first time of meditating. And then I started researching about it. Then I started to get interested into the tools and techniques and how many different versions and kinds of meditations there are out there. And it started to become more and more and more difficult because I knew so much more about meditation. My mind thought that it knew so much more about meditation. And I feel like a lot of times this is the same with human design, that the more you know, the more you start to box yourself in, not because the system itself boxes you in, but because you think that you know and understand what it is you should be doing. And when you're starting to really just listen to your strategy or follow your strategy and listen to your inner authority, so the physical symptoms, quote unquote, or the physical impulses that your body gives you when you're making the right type of decision or the wrong type of decision. That is really what you need to learn to hone in on. And that is why Ra, for example, said that the deconditioning process takes at least 7 years and it continues. It doesn't stop at 7 years. You're not deconditioned in 7 years according to him. It just continues in 7 year steps. And I personally don't believe that entirely because I think there are many ways, not just human design, that help you connect with this inner intuition or inner authority. And there are just different pathways on how to get to know how your intuition speaks to you. To me, human design is just hey, your inner authority is for us, the ego. And once we understand how the ego works, we can have an easier time understanding what that intuition means for us. How does it speak to us? And if I would have just had to figure out what is my intuition and I didn't have any kind of direction, and I feel like human design gives you a bit of a direction, I would still maybe be confused as to how my intuition speaks to me. And even now, with all this knowledge about our inner authority, we still have moments where it's like, okay, I feel like I should take this decision, but I'm taking a completely different one. And the important thing here becomes that when you're following your strategy and authority, you start to lose people around you because you're starting to become more yourself. So the wrong people will fall away and the right people will come. The great thing about that is that when you're going through this process, even if at some point you make a decision and then you're like, hey, actually, that was not the right decision for me. You go to these people and they're like, okay, fair enough. So you're just getting to know yourself. And when you have a good group of people around you, they accept you for the true and real, honest decisions that are aligned with you. So yeah, there are a lot of benefits to following this.
Dude, 100%. And I think because this is a hardcore podcast and we are both ego authorities, this, like, our experience probably isn't going to resonate with everyone, but if you guys are out there listening and you're also an ego authority, this may be helpful. I've mentioned it before, I don't always have a heart pull towards something, right? Like, not that I'm, like, in the last maybe 4 or 5 months, I've become a lot more in tune with my body, which has been so nice. Being in a situation where you're burnt out as an ego authority, right, can mitigate some of those heart pull feelings. But for me, I know that there are other markers of a decision that is not right for me. And it's so horrible. And like, I'm cognizant that I do it. And oftentimes I can't stop it, but I like pick at my arms. And I haven't done that in like 4 to 5 months, which has been amazing. There's still shit scarring on my arms, but it is what it is. That's part of life. But I think all of this to say is if you're not feeling the insides of your body, notice if there are external things that are happening that are trying to warn you and tell you that a situation that you're in is not right. Yeah. Even if it's scary to admit that.
Or numbing yourself through external factors.
Yeah. And I mean, that could be substances, that could be death scrolling on your phone, that can be TV. Yeah, a multitude of different things. So it can be, we can get into this learn mentality. And honestly, I think I did that similarly to you. Like when you started learning about meditation, I think I did that with human design, because contextually, for whatever reason, we want to know more, because I think we are groomed, if you will, to like not trust our bodies as humans. I think adults like our age with their kids now are doing a better job to, one, help their kids like tune into their emotions and like understand where their emotions are, and also maybe listen to their gut feelings, not only when they're hungry and full and satiated, but also like that intuition piece. So I'm interested to see how Gen Alpha and Gen Beta like lean into this, and maybe there's a bit less deconditioning on their ends because they are learning how to trust themselves, which would be dope. But for us millennials, Gen Zs, Gen Xers, and beyond, we've been pretty conditioned. So rather than getting stuck in that cycle of just learning, reading, even if you are a one line and you need to know all of the things, right? Like that can be the challenging part of how do I live my experiment and be okay with not knowing everything? And there is that balance. You are going to have to find that for yourself. You can, but like it will impede the process if you try and just keep on studying, reading rather than living it out. Think of even scientists, right? Like there's theoretical science and then there's like science that actually does experiments and whatnot. You have to find that balance between both. You can't just be on the theoretical side of things.
Yeah. Same with meditation or yoga or any of those things. You can read as much as you want, but if you're not going to sit down or step on your mat, it's going to get difficult to actually get into the benefits of these things.
Do you have any recommendations for that? Because I feel like with meditation and with yoga, it's something physical, right? Like there's something to do. Whereas with human design, it's a little bit more woo-woo. I know we're going to get into that a little bit more, but are there any big things that come to mind where you're just like, how to get over that hump?
Yeah, as you've said, it's not about not getting into the nitty-gritty, but it is about stepping into action. And yes, this is the phase 3. What was it called?
Part 3
that we're going to be talking about. How to actually begin. And that would be, with small decisions. Being consistent in making your small decisions by using your inner authority and by using your strategy. So the small decisions are not going to have as big of an impact, obviously. So if you're going to choose what it is you're going to eat on Monday for lunch, it's not going to impact you for the rest of your life, usually, unless you're eating poison or something like this. Okay, let's just say it's a normal food decision.
Granola.
Just exactly. So that shouldn't impact you as much. Or even if you have a burger for lunch on Monday, it's still okay. You're not going to gain 50 pounds just by having that one burger. But if you're going to have this every single day for every single meal, that's when it's going to get difficult. And the same thing with human design. It's about being consistent in your decision-making process. So an emotional inner authority may be like, but how am I going to make a food decision, a meal decision, if I have to wait for clarity? It's not necessarily that you have to wait for a very long time. You don't have to sleep over every small decision, quote unquote, but what can help you. So there are different things that I would recommend with an emotional authority. Either an emotional authority will go to a restaurant and they will have the menu in front of them. And usually they take a pretty long time to make a decision, usually, unless they've gone to this restaurant over and over again. But if it's a new restaurant and they want to see what's on the menu, they will read through it and see what it is they feel like having. And maybe they will go through the menu twice because they will see what resonates with them. And it may be a little tiny, hey, this may be the one. And then they read through it again and they're like, okay, that is the one that I want. So this is one way to go about it. Another way to go about it is for an emotional authority to gain clarity about what it is they really enjoy eating through a longer process. So they would try to experiment for themselves and already have a bit of a list of the things that they enjoy and don't enjoy because they've experimented with it for some time. It's not just when they're sitting at the restaurant, but for example, if you really want to know what it is you enjoy, then experiment with yourself at home. See, okay, do you like salads? If you're going to an Italian restaurant, do you like salads? Do you like fish? Do you like chicken? Do you like pasta? Do you like pizza? You're already starting to get a bit of a hang of it. And when you're starting to gain more clarity throughout your life, it would be recommended that you start to also remember the things that you've enjoyed so that it could shorten the process a little bit. Then again, we're talking about an emotional authority. So you will have highs and lows, and your decisions are going to vary depending on how you feel that day. And that is why the previous recommendation of gaining clarity throughout your lifetime can be a bit more helpful, so that you do make the aligned decisions when you're at the restaurant instead of riding your high or riding your low. So I think the emotional authority when it comes to food can be one of the trickiest ones. And when it comes to the other authorities, it is, again, you need to go with the small decisions and preferably also follow your strategy. So just navigating all of that and stepping into it bit by bit and honing in on what your body is telling you. So for me, one of the first things I would recommend are actually body scan meditations, just so that you start to feel your body again. What does it mean when your inner intuition or your inner authority is speaking to you? How does it feel? So to me, stepping into your body again, recognizing the signals, that would be the first step. And then applying human design strategy and authority.
That's really good. I think another way to start trusting yourself and your decisions as well is oracle cards. If you guys are into that, that can be another way of just like gaining more trust with yourself, to not overthink the cards that you're pulling and kind of just believe that they are the ones that you've chosen are the ones that you needed to read or see that day in some way, shape, or form. But then again, potentially not looking too much, feeling too much into it, but knowing that you can then trust yourself. I think those are probably small ways to tap into some of that. And it's not about getting it right, quote unquote, right? Like it's about just feeling into it and exploring the process of it and allowing yourself to reconnect. I really like what you suggested about like doing a body scan meditation. And do you have some of those that people can go to?
Yeah,
Nico?
on the Opportunity Meditations podcast.
Amazing.
There are a few that help you understand your emotions and feeling where your emotions are sitting. So take a look at that. Back to the cards, you can also simply use playing cards. And the way that I would use it to hone in on your intuition is to maybe have the pile in your hands and flip over the cards. But before you flip it over, really feel into what you think the card might be. And what you feel the card might be, because your mind can then come in and be like, hey, maybe it's a heart of a two of hearts. And your intuition was like, no, it was a queen of hearts or something like that. But really getting to know when your intuition was speaking and when your mind was speaking.
Maybe my next recommendation may be a bit manifestor-specific or like a bit channel to the throat specific. So whether you're a manifesting generator or a manifester. But I started doing this when we lived in Germany. I vividly remember like leaving our apartment, and it was still COVID times, and they had like a Weinstube like outside, which is like a local vintners like come into like the main like plaza lots, if you will. And there were like a certain number of seats, and like you had to be seated because it was COVID times, yada, yada, yada. Long story long. I vividly remember leaving our apartment and being like, we are going to find seats in the Weinstube closest to the house. And just saying it, right? Like there was intent and but there was intent behind it, and I genuinely believed it. And honestly, like 99.9% of the time when I said that, we found a seat at the place that we wanted to be. So for the manifestors and manifesting generators out there, it's a fun little thing to do to use your voice. And I also find connecting it to whatever gate you have in your throat can be an easier link to it. So the statements that I have are I have and I believe. So when I phrased those when I was first starting out, I was really trying to use the I have and I believe to just connect to it a little bit more. So if you do have gates in your throat, that can be a fun way to play around with this experiment in real life as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of times in human design, it is about waiting for something. Every type has to have patience. The manifester also has to have patience. I mean, yeah, people are like, yeah, they can just go out and do their thing, but no, because they still have to listen to which thing is the right thing. But yeah, it's a great point that we do have power. It's not that we are just pulled or pushed into a direction. And this is what I love about human design. It is not black and white. It is not telling you this is who you are. It is telling you this is your potential and this is your shadow. And you have the choice into which direction you're going to go. And you can stay in the conditioned aspects of life. You can just continue doing what everyone else wants you to do or wants you to be. Or you can choose to follow your inner guidance and see what that feels like. See what happens when you're doing that.
I think another thing that's important to note is like, it's not this steady linear trajectory. Like when you find out about human design, it's not like in 7 years, you're going to know everything. You're going to be so deconditioned. Like it's not like that. There are going to be times where you're super into it and you're really feeling into your experiment. You're really feeling the changes that you've made. And there are going to be times when you forget that human design is a thing and you kind of just, you go down this, it's not necessarily a hole, but like life happens and it's something that's maybe on the back burner and there isn't necessarily more progress in your deconditioning. You kind of just stay stagnant as to where you're at. And then something in life spurs it back up again where you're just like, why am I facing this challenge over and over again? And maybe that's when you take a look at your chart again or grab a reading with Miko to learn something a little bit different, a little bit deeper. And then you're like, dude, yes, this makes sense. And then you work on that little thing, you know? So it's not always going to be like a stepping stool stone. Those aren't the right words, but sometimes it's like a loop-de-loop in your line, right? It's not always going to be linear. And I think that that's so important to remember that the journey is going to look different for everyone. Even if you're super hardcore about it, the journey is going to look different for you. And there's always going to be like a messy part, and that's okay. Nothing is direct from a textbook. And it doesn't have to be. It's not science. It's you. And you're feeling into it.
I feel like the human design experiment is your self-love journey. That's what I would refer to it. And it is because it is about getting to know who you truly are. And that happens through listening to your intuition. Human design is just helping you kind of narrow it down. Instead of having all the options of what is intuition, you're like, okay, it speaks to you like this. And to me, this is what is the helpful thing about it. It just helps you love yourself more, accept yourself more for all that you are. And yeah, it's never linear. It's always up and down. And sometimes you're facing so many challenges that you're like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Why am I getting so many hurdles to jump over? I don't want to work on myself anymore. Like this happens. It happens. And other times you're like, okay, I'm ready. I can do this. And then you dive back in. And it can just be a few days that where you're like, okay, no, I just want to numb myself. But just be mindful that it just is going to be a few days and that it doesn't take overhand. This is the important part. Yes, you are going to have days where you're like, oh, I don't want to do this and I just want to zone out and not do anything, but don't let this carry on. Don't let this drag throughout your life. Be mindful that the journey must go on. The show must go on.
And I think it's important to know if there are any triggers for that too, right? Like, is the weather crappy outside? Maybe that's a trigger for you. Have you had multiple days of like rain or cold weather? I know for me that I go into like hibernation mode in the winter, and winter for me is just far less productive than summer is. And it being winter when it's supposed to be summer right now is really messing me up, let me tell you. But I think
direct light,
girl, there's a whole other thing we could talk about that. But like, whoo, yeah. So I think if you do want to bring some science into it, you can track this for yourself, right? Like, are there different triggers for you? Is it a person in your life? And if so, maybe, as Miko said, right? Like, not everyone is for us in every season of our lives. And sometimes that sucks, but sometimes it's really healthy for you because the only person that really matters in all of this is you. So pay attention to maybe some of those triggers. Track when you have an emotional high, if you are an emotional authority. I feel like that's probably the most challenging one. We've said this before, but it's probably the most challenging one to kind of get a grip on the emotional flows. And I mean, with an ego authority, I never know when I'm going to have a heart pull towards something. You know what I mean? It could be days, weeks, months. I don't know. But at least with an emotional authority, you can kind of get an idea of when you're in an emotional low and when you're in an emotional high. And maybe if you're a woman, maybe that's in sync with your cycle. Maybe that's lunarly. Those aren't words.
Loony.
in sync with the moon. Dude, especially if you're a reflector, like really feeling into your 28-day cycle, your personal 28-day cycle, in flux with the moon or in flow with the moon. Really feel into that. So if you want to bring like that science piece of it, into your journey, into your experiment, track some of that stuff, because that's going to be significantly more helpful. Or if you're feeling off, bring the transits in and be like, I know this isn't my energy. Why do I feel like this today? And I've found that to be really helpful when I feel off and not myself. It's usually transit related, and it's usually illuminating my emotional solar plexus, and that's not my norm. So take that into account into your journey as well, if you want to gain better insights as to what your energy is versus external factors that may be influencing your energy as well.
Absolutely. Totally agree. So now that we've talked a little bit about how to do it, also how to not do it, let's talk about some of the common pitfalls, apart from just focusing on the theory of things. One thing would be to try and rush the deconditioning process. According to Ra, as we said, it's at least 7 years, and it continues. It doesn't stop at 7 years, so don't even get your hopes up. But it's like going to the gym. You can't expect to go to the gym one day and be like, why are my muscles not growing? Why can't I see the difference in the mirror? You're going to have to do it consistently. And that is the same thing with human design, or riding a car, driving a car, not riding a car. Everyone can ride a car, but driving a car is the same thing. You're not going to get it from the first moment you step into the car. So human design, again, you just need to practice it and try it and see what works, see what doesn't work, feel into yourself. The other thing is comparing yourself is also not going to help, because every human design chart is so unique. It is so unique even if you are a twin. So even if you're born just a minute apart, same place, same person, just a minute apart, there are going to be slight differences, but beyond that, you are living two different lives. You are in two different bodies. You're going to experience very different things. You're going to encounter different people. You're going to have different challenges in childhood or in teenage years or in adult life. You're going to have different partners, etc., etc. And that has an impact on your chart. So as a human design reader, we always have the choice to see the potential, but we can also see the shadow. And as twins, you do have the same potential, but it doesn't mean that you have the same character. It doesn't have that you mean that you have the same expression and experiences in life. And that does form your choices. You have two different souls with two different missions on this planet, and you're going to have to make different choices. And in some aspects, you're going to choose the potential, and some you're going to choose your shadow, and the other twin is also going to make different kinds of choices in different situations. So I hope that also demystifies a little bit of the twin differences. Then a lot of people are like, yeah, but we have the same chart. Yeah, but. So I hope that helps a little bit on that. Another thing is to over-identify with your own personal chart. When you're seeing your chart and you're seeing that you're a certain profile, a certain type, a certain incarnation cross, you have certain centers defined and others undefined. You have certain gates with certain lines. If you're going to pin yourself down on this is me, that's going to be very, very difficult, and it's not the right way to go about it. The first and foremost thing that you need to follow is your strategy and your intuition, and that cannot predict what is going to come out of your chart, what is going to get activated, and when it's going to get activated. And I feel like it's a bit like DNA. You know how certain genes are dormant and other genes are coming out at some point or another, or they just don't get activated at all? That's what happens with human design as well. Certain elements in your human design chart are going to come out, are going to get activated, and others won't. They will remain dormant, or they will remain in the shadow, depending. So don't use human design as an excuse. Definitely never do that. Never say one of my most dreaded excuses, yeah, I didn't message you back because I'm a projector. I don't have the energy to do that. And I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? No, just be honest with me. Just tell me, hey, didn't feel like doing it. I mean, yeah. What's your experience with that?
Dude, same. I just feel like if you're boxing yourself in, you're doing yourself a disservice, especially if you're using it as like a permission slip or to opt out of something. So don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Self-sabotaging behavior where you're like, but it's with everything. It's not just human design. And sometimes people are just using human design. They're like, yeah, okay, now I have another excuse. Instead of saying, but my parents were like that, they're now saying, yeah, but my human design chart says that I'm like that. I mean, I have to also say that there are certain elements in my chart where I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. Now I understand why I'm like that. But it's a different way to go about it. It's not that I'm saying I have to do that because my chart tells me that I have to be doing that, but instead it is now I finally get why I've had this strong desire or this impulse of I want to do that.
It's an aha moment rather than an excuse, or an explanation rather than an excuse. So let's take a big zoom out and look at the whole picture that is human design. Think of it as the arc that's kind of like tying it all together, right? You have this, we're all born with this innate knowing of what is a yes for us, what is a no for us. But societally and the people that we surround ourselves with, literally starting from our parents, because they didn't know, and because society told them to be a certain way as a parent, right? Like all of this has affected us in our ability to listen to our bodies. So human design really is giving us the language in a wild chart to be able to understand our bodies a bit better. And this is something that is technically innate within us, but this is kind of the Rosetta Stone, if you will, the translation for what we are feeling to a visual for us to better understand what we should be feeling already. So it's not about becoming someone new. It's kind of just peeling back the layers that we've put up around ourselves to, I want to use like a donkey parfait, like a blooming onion. Ooh, like a blooming onion. So like you take the layers off of the blooming onion at like Outback, right? So it's just finding that inner onion layer that's always been there. That is the core essence of you. I don't know where that came from, guys, but we're here. Yum. Or even like a scallion, like on a scallion, you're like peeling off, this is another onion reference, but like you're peeling off the outer like dry layers of the scallion to get to the inside part of the scallion. Same. That's what human design is helping you do. That's the deconditioning process. And again, it's not someone new. That onion, you were always there. You just had some layers that needed to be peeled off.
I feel like the onion is a perfect analogy just because this journey is gonna be full of tears as well, guys. Let's be honest.
Hey, full circle. Fantastic. Love that a Shrek moment was able to come into this episode. Yeah. So all of that to say is you're not gonna not go back to your chart, right? Like I look at my chart probably once a week, once every 2 weeks. If something in my world comes up and I'm just like, is this something that I need to be aware of? Is this something that has been brought to my attention for a certain reason? And again, not looking for an excuse, but looking for understanding. And sometimes I find it in my chart and sometimes I don't. If I don't, then fine, cool. It's another learning process or it's another area of growth. But that's not to say that you have to stare at your chart daily to better understand it. You will go back to it. Like I was saying when we were talking about like the non-linear journey, there are going to be times where something clicks. You're going to look at your chart. Maybe you can garner the answers that you need from it, or maybe you need to talk to someone who can better read your chart and help specifically unmask or maybe take away some of those outer layers of said scallion to help you better learn like what you need to be focusing on and how to get more clarity in that area so that you can continue your deconditioning process. It's not a set it and forget it, and it's not a stare at it all the time thing. It really is, like with everything, finding the balance between theory and implementation of all of this.
Well said.
I'm here for it.
This kind of completes our episode for today, I would say. So we hope that this helps you integrate human design into your life even more after all of the previous episodes, the little cherry on top. Thank you so much for listening, for being here on this journey with us. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me, Celestina. It was really a pleasure.
Samesies.
So, yeah. If you have any kind of questions for me or for Celestina, let us know, message us, email us. We're still here. We'll still receive the emails. And We wish you all the very best, and let's see what the future has in store for us.
Ciao, guys.
Bye, everyone. Hardcore, the Human Design Podcast. Bloopers.
I'm just gonna put a little marky poo on that. There's gonna be some great bloops. Dope.
Part 4. So now that we've talked about... What did we talk about? All of the stuff that we just talked about.
How to do it. How to implement it.
Let's talk about how to not do it.